Neil Pasricha, thank you so much for joining me.
You're welcome, Mark Henick. Do you refer to everybody by first and last name?
Usually at the top and at the bottom. So you know who you are, but of course, why wouldn't they know who you are? Because you're currently, You Are Awesome is your most recent, signed by you, of
Oh,
course.
you're sweet.
But
How
the
did
New
how did that turn out? How was I able to see that and what the letters weren't backwards?
I don't know, some of them do it, but I guess this one just, I'll hold it up there again so that way
Yeah.
people can see it.
Uh,
Yeah, no, it reverses it,
I,
which is
I was
pretty.
actually impressed with the name call out because no one can pronounce my last name. So I was like, wow, he's just gonna throw it out there and get it right. Like that's a double. That
Well, I
was
had
what
a
I was
bit of a
impressed
chance
with.
to.
I was actually impressed with your pronunciation, not your formality.
See, that part just came naturally.
I know you're just totally uncouth.
I am.
You
I'm a.
can't you can't
I'm a.
convince me otherwise.
No, I'm a mess most of the time.
To prove that you aren't a mess, not only are you connected to Bell Let's Talk in such a deeply involved way, which I also look up to, but you also have like a fancy microphone. Now I'm just like amazed. What is this? This is like
So,
you're like a Madonna.
so this is actually because I'm neurotic. When I go to speaking events, you and I both, you speak a lot more than I do, but I like a very particular microphone.
Ah,
It's a comfort thing. It's a
mm,
reliability thing, I guess. So eventually I just went out and bought the one that I really liked. Because it was just easier than being a diva and telling everybody all these.
that's true. Because a real diva brings his own mic.
Exactly. Let's talk more about enough about me. Let's talk more about you.
Okay, I'm ready. I know. I'm just. You know what? I'm all yours. What would you? How would you like to talk? I'll talk about whatever you'd like to talk about.
Well, Bill Let's Talk this year, of course, is as it is every year, is an incredible opportunity to raise awareness of mental health
Hmm.
and mental illness too, of course. But I
Yeah.
think we miss the mental health part a lot in these kinds of conversations.
Mhm.
It's important and it's good to talk about everything that can go wrong, or at least everything that goes sideways for people. But I think it's also equally important to talk about things like resilience and recovery and the things that protect us and steel us again, or weather us against the storms.
Mm.
So you've been talking a lot about resilience, especially with your new book out. And I'm wondering if you can tell us a little bit more about what you discovered in writing this book about resilience.
Sure. I have a side question for you, which we can park, but is the term mental illness
Hmm.
still like the term? Because I've just have found that I have been told lately by a couple people, hey, you should say mental health challenges, and I'm like, oh,
Hmm.
did not know that. So anyway, that's like a thing I'm curious about, and you're my expert, so I'm gonna ask
Right.
you.
Well, I think it's actually a contentious issue. You know, there's a large group of people who very much identify with the illness label, that it's a brain disease.
Mm,
I tend to be somewhere in the middle, probably more so leaning on the social progressive side, I guess, if that's what you call it. Um, where, yes, there are some severe and many severe and persistent mental illnesses that can be properly characterized as so. But I actually get really uncomfortable when people use the term, and even do it myself, mental illness in the singular, as though all mental illnesses are the same, from everything from
oh,
situational depression through severe and persistent schizophrenia. There's
mm.
actually a lot of diversity within that term, and I think that's where the mental health problems, mental health challenges piece comes in.
So you would say mental illnesses?
I try to, yeah, as much as possible.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, okay. My awareness keeps expanding, and that's why I asked you because I need to have a good answer. For me, on resilience, okay, let's go on a little rant. So resilience is super low right now. We are paper thin. We are feeling fragile. Okay. Anxiety rates are spiking. Depression rates are up. Loneliness rates are up, and mental illnesses are up, plural. And so for me, I wrote this book, You Are Awesome, to try to go on a personal journey of discovery on what are some things we could do to, I like that phrase you use, steel ourselves, to ready ourselves to become internally a bit stronger. And you won't be surprised to hear that a lot of what I sort of poo poo in the book are just things like like our connection and our addiction and our always onness to
Mhm.
our technology and our cell phones and our social media and I know people are watching this on social media. I'm not trying to say you throw the baby out with the bathwater and get rid
Yeah.
of all connectivity and go live in the forest. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that so much of the systems that we are now using in our day-to-day lives, like how we wake up and how we go to bed and like what we do in the middle of the night, they're actually making us feel on a whole like this higher level order of unsettled at all times, and you don't even notice it because you're always feeling that, and it's like
Mhm.
everyone is, and we're all in this together. For example, what I always say to people is, and you mentioned speeches, so lately at my speeches I've been saying to people, so hey, everybody in the room, um, put your hand up if you sleep within 10 feet of your cell phone,
Mm.
and guess,
Response, like,
pardon.
what's the response to that question
It's
usually?
like
What?
it's like
Yeah.
95%,
Yeah.
put their hand up. And then and there's a murmur.
Mm.
Like there's like, oh, we are, like they kind of get it right away with the hands, right? Like, and then I'm like, oh, and keep your hand up if the last thing you do before you go to bed is check your cell phone,
Mhm. Mhm.
right? And of course, everyone keeps their hand up because it's like, of course, I either turn on airplane mode or I like set my alarm or I like, see if there's any last minute emails from my boss or like there's a kind of there's like a closing up, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Then I say, which is pretty obvious, I'm like, and who checks it when you wake up? And it's like freaking everyone.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So then I say, and by the way, never come see me speak because I'm giving away my bit here. Um, and then I say, what would we call you if you drank a bottle of wine before bed every
Mhm.
night, slept within 10 feet of a bottle of wine, and drank a bottle of wine when you woke up every morning?
Mhm.
Like would have no problem openly labeling you some form of alcoholic.
Sure.
Yet we're all phoneaholics now, and we have not labeled that addiction. We all think it's normal because
Yeah.
everyone's doing it. And
Why
there's
do you think why do you think that is? Why is everybody doing it? Is it to escape?
uh I'm of so I read a book called Irresistible by Adam Alter, a New York, NYU professor, and he shows how a lot of big technology has naturally created hardware and software that is more and more and more addictive
Mm.
over time, and you can argue whether that's malicious or whether that's just like science and like progress and like this worked. So made Instagram auto scrolling, or they made Netflix auto playing and YouTube auto play because then people watched more stuff, and then
Right.
like, so this stuff, now there's like arguments about whether or not our human cognitive defenses can actually handle things that permanently scroll and things that autoplay, and so that's a separate argument on the ethics
Yeah.
side, but like for now it's like this stuff's really addictive.
Right.
Okay.
There was somebody who released a book not too long ago. I can't recall
Uh-huh.
his name. Maybe you do, but there was somebody previously involved with Google who said that the delay
Yeah.
before your email pops up
Yeah.
is intentional. That that's not a system lag. That it gives your brain a dopamine hit when you're waiting just that half a second and then it pops up.
Yeah, that would probably Tristan Harris, the
I
founder of
think so.
Center for Humane Technology, whose work I love and recommend, and I've been trying to connect with him for a while because I'm a big proponent of his stuff. So Center for Humane Technology is great. So then the answer, by the way, so then get back into like the sort of how do we build a little bit of mental resilience here, um, and so I always tell people first off, your cell phone should not be in your in your bedroom.
Sure. Yeah.
So first things first, our cell phones do not live in our bedroom, and the best way to do that is to move your charger.
Mm.
You move your charger to your basement or somewhere far, far, far away from you. Move your charger because that's where you'll have to go to plug in thing in.
Yeah.
Actually, these sort of permanently charged things or like charging pads, that kind of stuff kind of scares me. So,
It's also funny, I find,
uh,
because when I suggest this to people, sometimes they say, "But my alarm is on
uh-huh,
like."
uh-huh, uh-huh.
Well, buy an alarm clock. It hasn't been that long since
Yeah.
we used alarm
Yeah.
clocks.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I said this the other day to um, uh, Dave Asprey.
Mm.
He hosts a big podcast called Bulletproof Radio,
Yeah.
and founder of Bulletproof Coffee, etc. And he said, Neil, my cell phone is my like sleep circadian rhythm detector, and my like, you know what I mean? Like he had all these other reasons, and it was interesting that he said that because I was like, oh, he like his phone is like on at night, not on in an it's in airplane mode, but it's like it's part of his kind of technological monitoring You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And I was like, well, that's interesting. And then I talked to a journalist, and I won't name the journalist, although he's a prominent journalist who's interviewing me for an interview for a newspaper. And I said this to him, and he's like, yeah, that's what I do at night. I was like, yeah. And so obviously your phone's in airplane mode. He's like, no, it's not. I was like, what do you mean it's not? He's like, I get texts all night, and then I like wake up and I answer them. So I
Wow.
was like, I'm like, the thing in the bedroom is bad, but there's extremes in the bedroom. Like Dave Asprey is in airplane mode and like doing other stuff. So I'm saying this guy's like woken up because he's checking text. Either way, it shouldn't be there. And either way, yes, their alarm clocks are $10 at Walmart. So just go buy one, um, and get it out of your bedroom. Okay.
Yeah.
The other thing
Yeah.
is, as you probably know, looking at bright screens an hour before bedtime reduces your melatonin production. So you're not having as deep or restful sleep. I actually think that sleep hygiene is a big thing that we need to start talking about. And for Leslie and I, my wife's name is Leslie. For Leslie and I, like, I don't know what happened, but in the last 6 to 12 months, suddenly we're both like eye patch people. We
Yeah.
both like got the big thick eye patches now. We're like, we say our goodnight kiss and like we're both blind. Like we're both like,
Yeah. I
all right.
just got new ones myself. Actually, they're
Yeah,
really
what do
good.
you do?
The Manta Sleep. I don't know if you've ever heard of them.
Yes, that's the same
Yeah.
one. The one
This
with
is
the
not a
two big
sponsor. This
eyes?
is not an ad, but they're super comfortable.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I'm working on I'm trying to find the one that works for me, and I've traveled with one, and then I always have like a big hoodie so that like literally I always wear a big hoodie so that like on airplanes I can just go like,
Yeah.
you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like that's like literally built in for that reason. Anyway, so a couple things there. Move yourself from the basement. Have better sleep hygiene. No screens an hour before bedtime. Okay, that's another thing. And then in the morning, what I advocate is when you wake up, don't jump out of bed. Don't scream towards your alarm clock and rush to grab a coffee and run out the door. Don't do that. Just take 2 minutes, 2 minutes to answer a 3 prompt framework to strengthen and level set your mind for the day. And
Mhm.
the 3 prompts are I will let go of, I am grateful for, and I'm trying to do my finger across the screen. I'm very bad at it. Okay. Okay. And the third one is I will focus on.
Mm.
I will let go of, I am grateful for, I will focus on. I will let go of helps us crystallize and eject a little anxiety.
Mm.
Dr. Jean Twenge at San Diego University says that anxiety rates have spiked over 30% over the past 5 years. By the way, baked into that white paper is the phrase due to the ascendance of the smartphone.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Um, so get rid of your anxiety because you're not going to the Catholic confession chamber. And that's how people used to do it.
Mhm.
And the secularism is rising. No religion is rising, and not just Catholicism, but Buddhism, Mormonism, Judaism, Islam all have a form of confession built into the religion. If you no
Mhm.
longer have a confession practice built into your religious practice, depending who you are, where you live, what you do, you need one.
And
And
psychologically, it serves that cathartic function.
exactly. And so you and me, you probably go to therapy. I go to therapy, but what I've learned about therapy is, and I know this already, is it's super inaccessible.
Yeah.
Meaning that you either are in a public system in a super long waiting list, or you have to shell out like $200 an hour. And maybe you happen to have an employee benefits coverage plan, and maybe that covers 5 sessions or something.
Yeah. And most people hardly even have that.
Great. So, and by the way, side note, for anyone who's in Toronto watching this or listening to this, I'm a huge advocate of a place on Bloor Street West called Hard Feelings. I don't know
Mhm.
if you know this, Mark.
No, I don't.
Oh, okay. This is amazing. You should look into this. This is run by Kate Cowan. Kate is a therapist, and she has started an accessible therapy practice with a retail storefront that sells mental health books and therapies offered by like 20 plus licensed therapists at far below market prices at like something like $50 an hour. There's a huge waiting list, but they're serving the community with accessible therapy between the public and private systems.
That's a,
Anyway, it's
that's
amazing.
amazing. I've never heard of it before, but it sounds like a great resource.
You gotta know. I just interviewed Kate for 3 books for my podcast, so I'm going to be talking about her on my podcast very soon. Anyway, I will let go of helps you crystallize and inject. I will let go of comparing myself to Tim Ferriss. I will let go of the 5 pounds I gained over Christmas. I will let go of the fact that I yelled at my kids last night. Like, what was I doing? I'm a terrible dad. Let go of it. Write it down. Get rid of it. Then I am grateful for. I don't probably need to go into the research here, but there's so much research on just writing down a few meaningful, specific gratitudes a day.
Mhm.
Makes you healthier, makes you mentally stronger, makes you happier over time. And they got to be specific. So you can't just write down my husband, my
Yeah.
kid, and my dog, you have to write when my husband Antonio puts the toilet seat down, when my 3-year-old gave me a painting from school, when my
Yeah.
dog learned how to shake a pot. Gotta be specific stuff. And then the
To
last one,
relive the memory and make it more real for you.
exactly. In your brain, you've got a visual cortex. Inside that, you've got area 17. You that area lights up when Trooper shakes a paw, and when you write about it, area 17 in your visual cortex lights up again.
Right.
So you were just for lack of better words, you're just deepening that neural pathway towards the
Yeah.
positive.
Yeah.
And then, and by the way, and we know this, our brains naturally want to focus on the negative, right?
Right.
Our brains naturally want fight or flight, amygdala. We
Mhm.
want to rubberneck on the highway. We want to look at bad news in the newspaper. We naturally want to
Right.
do that. So you have to practice the other way.
And Martin Seligman, that famous psychologist
Yeah.
at Penn,
Yeah.
who pioneered the idea of learned helplessness, he
My
pivoted.
goal is to be like this by the end, by the way.
You
Yes.
what? Sorry?
My goal is to be like right, my eyes like right here by the end, like the
You
manta.
interviewing your pupil.
Yeah.
But
Martin Seligman.
Seligman shifted. He pivoted in his career several years ago. I mean, he pioneered this idea of learned helplessness, that we learn how to be helplessness based on the same process,
Yeah.
repetition, really. But he
Hmm.
pivoted into learned optimism. That it goes
Mm,
the other way too.
yeah.
That we learn how to be positive, and it's the same neural process.
Right. Beautiful. I love that.
So we've got letting go,
Yep.
we've got
Great.
gratitude.
Oh, and the last one is I will focus on, because here's the other thing we all feel these days: overwhelmed. We have too much stuff to do. Um, are you one of those people like I am, like most people are, who just like at the end of the day when you're feeling anxious or stressed, or at the beginning of the day, you make a list of everything you have to do, and then you
Okay.
feel overwhelmed by the size of your list because it
Yeah.
covers like both sides of a cue card or an entire file and notes in your iPhone or whatever. So I will focus on is a way to carve away, husk away the endless could do and should do, and write down simply one thing you will do.
Mm.
And that process often takes you 30 seconds of deep thought.
Hmm.
You're like, what is the one thing
Yeah.
I need or want and will be happy if I get done today? You don't
I,
give
I
yourself that 30 seconds, so you don't do it.
I cheat on my to-do list sometimes, actually all the time, and I write on things that I've already done, so that way I can cross them off.
Yeah. Buy a sexy microphone. Check.
Hey. So which of this, and I'm keeping you way too long here, so I'm going to let you go, but I'm interested in knowing which of those three things is the most difficult for you, and which
Uh-huh.
has become the easiest for you over time with practice.
Okay, so the easiest over time with practice is probably the gratitudes, because I wrote a blog for 4 years called 1000awesomethings.com. That was the precursor to my very first book called The Book of Awesome. So, in a sense, from 2008 to 2012, I had a really ugly, atrophied, you know, rusty muscle. And
Mm,
over those 4 years, that became like a svelte machine,
right.
to the point now where today I do that all the time. So I'm
And
really good at
Sean
finding simple.
Anker talks about the positive psychologist, how you train your brain to scan the world for the positive after that, because you know you have homework to do for it later.
Yeah, exactly. And also, like, I'm in the process of signing a book deal for another book of awesome like that. And to be honest with you, one of the reasons I want to sign that book deal is so that I then have another year or two of forcing myself to look for and write them down. I just will bake that in because I'll be
Yeah.
conscripting myself to do it. And on my blog,
Congratulations on that too. I'm sure people will be looking forward to it.
thanks. But my point there was thank you, and I appreciate that. I don't want to rush through that, but I'm because I know as I do that, people are like, no, no, thank you, so great, and I'm like, yeah, yeah, yeah. But I'm not, wait, thank you. And then, but what I want to say is, for anyone, the goal there is to make it public. So if you make it on a public blog, if you do it on Twitter, if you do it at your family dinner, you can play Rose, Rose, Thorn, Bud. You go around the dinner table, everyone says a rose from their day, then another rose from the day. Rose is a gratitude or a positive thing. I got an assistant hockey practice. My boss gave me a compliment, whatever. Then a thorn, something that didn't go well, and a bud is something you're looking forward to, BUD. Then just again, make it public, put it in a system, put it in a dinner, put it in a tweet, put it in an email you always send to like your parents every day, whatever. Just make it something you have to do. Okay.
Yeah.
So that one's the easiest to answer your question. The hardest one is always the first one. I will let go of, because it means that I have to be really honest with something that I'm feeling anxious or worried or stressed about. And when I'm not honest, I say, oh, nothing.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that's the instinct. I'll be like, oh, nothing's bothering me today. And then I'm like, oh, then I'll notice at the end of the day, I've just had something kind of dull dripping in the back of my brain. And it was this nasty email I got last night when
Mm.
someone canceled something on me. And I was like, oh, I told myself that didn't bug me, but it sat there. So then the next morning I need to just journal it out. And then it literally is gone, and there's research around this. The Catholic Confession Chamber works.
Yeah.
So just you gotta just journal it, and then it's gone.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Neil, this is all great advice, and I don't want to keep you longer than I promised, since I already have.
No, I'm
But
good.
you know,
I'm happy.
as you just said, the hardest part is letting go, and unfortunately, I have to let you go now.
Yes, it is hard. Mark, thanks for the chat. Thanks for all the work you're doing on
Thank
on
you. Where
mental
can
health
people?
and mental illnesses, and, I love talking to you as always.
Thank you, and I'm gonna soak in that gratitude, because I do the same thing. I just pass it off. But thank you so much, and I look forward to seeing that next book, Neil.
Thanks, Mark. Talk to you soon.
Take care. Bye bye.
Bye. Bye, everybody.